Further, the relationship between China and Africa. With us, Dr. David Monyae from the Confucius Institute at the University of Johannesburg. A very good evening to you, Dr. Monyae, and thank you so much for speaking to us. It's not necessarily a new discussion. It's about how we're framing it. The old literature is saying neo-imperialist or neoliberal. Have we gone beyond that stage?
I think some of the questions and the manner in which we are framing it is quite a bit misplaced. I think the key question for me is that Africa is going through its own golden age, and how should it take advantage of this changing in the world, where it's no longer a Western world. Now we have China and quite a number of other powers that are somehow having an upper hand when it comes to relation in the world, investments on our continent, and we really need to ask questions instead of getting bogged down on questions that and issues that are raised by Western out of fear and competition with China. We need to ask the bigger question: are we benefiting out of all the relationship we have, not just with China, but the West and everyone? To what extent can we leverage this golden opportunity we now have that is no longer a Western narrative in global affairs?
So how does Africa then negotiate? You're talking about new topographies of power, and obviously you're talking about the West, that's within the context of the WTO. How do we, sharpen our negotiating skills?
We need to have some of the best negotiators. I think that's the very first thing. We also need to see which are areas and sectors that will answer some of the core questions that are bedeviling us. I think core of it is the question of unemployment. There's huge unemployment among the youth. We need the kind of companies, the kind of business and investments in sectors that are core to have unemployment, to deal drastically with unemployment. We also need to change the relationship that since the post-independence on the African continent in the 60s, Africa has always been exporting raw material. To what extent are we beneficiating our core materials that we have, so that we don't have a situation where all the nice coffee we're having is coming from Kenya, Ethiopia, and Tanzania, and it goes to London, it comes back as British coffee. I mean, we need to have this coffee having beneficiated here so that there is added value to the products that we
So we'll look at some of the complaints of our viewers in just a moment, but the complaint often is the PACs, and especially that on labor. We've seen a great deal of migration. Is it labor migration or is it entrepreneurial migration?
I think it's both. We have to ensure that we enter into these negotiations, particularly with China that is much more bigger than most countries, even those in the developed world. 1.3 billion people. It has cash, unlike the Western world that is, cash is drying up on that part of the world. And therefore, when we enter this deal, through the AU-China deal, that through the China-Africa Forum, we have a golden opportunity to negotiate collectively.
Hold the thought, Dr. Monyae. Let's now take a look at the African perspective on the streets of Johannesburg. What do people say?
We need to create value as Africans so that we can capture that value and trade with Chinese. But if Chinese are bringing money here for Chinese to operate here and not be part of that economy that is going to be created, then we're going to have a lot of issues.
What will be some of the issues?
To be paying back the debt, because if you are taking so much money at the value we are taking, it will be a challenge to pay it back if we are not investing it in creating value. Like we have mines here. If we can look at going into mining and processing everything that leaves our shores, like your iron ore, your platinum, your gold, your silver. Then we trade finished goods. If you look at Japanese, they have mountains in Japan. They can't plow crop. What they do is engineering. They bring all the raw material from everywhere, even Sweden. Then they make a complete product, they send it to the world. If we are not going to be doing that, we're going to be enslaved by the Chinese capital.
China has invested for their own privilege. If you look, they've invested in most of the countries where they can get steel or diamonds or all of that. But it's never just an investment. There's always an outcome or something that needs to benefit them. So we'll wait and see what they're going to benefit from South Africa.
Africa itself, it's doing very bad. So with China coming in and helping out, it does bring obviously some light to Africa, especially in the state that we're in, economically wise. So on the economy side, I don't think it's really such a bad idea. We all need to help each other at some point, you know. Like there's a bad side as well. I mean, nothing comes for free.
I think it's positive for positive reasons, because we need any growth. Because you can see China is a world-leading country, and I think we need to also get onto that bandwagon where we can create more jobs. If they can give us jobs, I mean, why not? You know, so I think that's a way forward. Any investment is good investment.